everybody, welcome back to my channel. It's Carol here at Oak House Journals, and as you can see from the bits and bobs that I've got on my desk, I'm going to do the assignment for this week, week 44 of Margarete Miller's Collage Challenge of 2025. Apologies if there are a few shadows. Time has got away from me today. Normally I like to record these in the morning when it's quiet in the household here, but I've not had that much of an opportunity today, so it's much later on in the day, so please forgive me for the shadows. Okay, so quickly going through the prompts and my choices. A diagram or a chart is the first one. Well, a chart is a visual representation of data using graphical elements like bars and slices and lines to make the data or information easier to read or understand. So I've got this graph here, which was drawn by my father many years ago for a dissertation he did when he first joined the RAF, and as you can see it's about the rotation of crops and the three-field system. He came from farming stock, so he obviously did his dissertation on something that he was familiar with. So I'm going to be making good use of this little chart here. The second prompt is something that squeaks or honks. Well, I'm going for a goose because they honk. A section of a magazine advertisement. Well, I've gone for this old advertisement, and it came from a vintage magazine that I have here. It doesn't relate in any way, shape or form to the crop rotation system, but I wanted to use it because of the colour or the aging of the paper, which matches the coloration of this paper, so I wanted to tie it in together a little bit. The next prompt is a cake. These incredibly are images of cakes. Now, there is a company that I have watched for a good many years now who make cakes that look a bit like the Faberge eggs, and they are absolutely stunning. And these are two of their eggs. This is an Easter egg, which is on its stand, and then it's on a cake board, and then this one is just on its stand. And I'm going to be making use of both of those today. Well, I think I'm going to make use of both of them, so I'll certainly be making use of one of them. The next prompt is something inspired by a fairy tale. Now, if you see those, which are golden eggs, and you see this gentleman here, then you'll probably know what fairy tale I'm going to be inspired by, and it's the goose that laid the golden egg. So this is my goose, these are her golden eggs, and this is the greedy farmer. So that's my take on a fairy tale. The final prompt is the bonus prompt, which is patterned paper. I've got a couple of pieces here because I don't know what size I'm going to use. This is an offcut, which I think is probably big as I'm going to need, but if I need a bigger piece, I've obviously got this one. So I'm going to pop that one off to one side for the moment and have it in reserve. And as always, I've got my working area here, and my prompts are going above me or in front of me there. So I'm not going to be using these focal elements just yet, so I'm going to pop these off to one side and look to be using this. I don't want to use this piece of paper on the back, so I'm going to cut that away. As always, I'll probably be cutting that down smaller, but for now I'm just going to audition it in place to see how it feels. This is a lot bigger, but I've got room to chop it top and bottom. So for now, I'm just going to place it on there. I could have that there so that it just peeps out at the top saying advertisement, or I could even pull it over that way, something like that. Okay, not really liking that at the moment. Let's pop it to one side for now. See what I can do with this. Just going to pop that on there, maybe something like that. Soften that by having that behind it. Just playing with it now to see or get a feel of what it would look like if I had that green all the way inside my working area. So I'm kind of imagining what it's going to look like down there. So I'm going to bring in my focal elements And the first thing I'm thinking is his head going inside there, which means I would trim that quite a bit across the top. I don't have to use all of that advert because it just says a section of a magazine advertisement, so I could just use a small portion of that. My goose, I'm kind of thinking could go down here, maybe cover his foot. She's slightly bigger than he is, so she needs to be in the foreground. Where's my eggs? Here they are. They could almost be like that, just tucked under her slightly. I think I'm going to bring them so her feet are over the top of them. I think that kind of works. Having him down here off this piece means that he's not particularly grounded, he's floating in midair, so that's not ideal. So let's just bring him up a little bit, and actually his shoulders could almost be framed by that writing there, and that would work. And it kind of brings him into this a little bit more. I mean, we could even take him higher up there, which I might need to do to get him in, but for now I'm just going to have him lower down and see how that works. I think this pattern paper softens this quite nicely. Would have been nicer had it been blue to pick up the blue of his shirt and the blue tones in my goose there. And this egg here, this one particularly, has shades of blue in it. I might take it off its stand, but for now, or off its cake board base, but for now it can sit like that. This one could go in here. I don't really want this one on its base, so I'm going to cut that away now before I do anything else. These cakes are just absolutely incredible, they really are. Or I could have these eggs like that. Be nice to have a few more of these actually. I'm actually wondering whether to cut away these eggs here, these two bottom ones, and position them down there. I think that would work. And then I could have those two eggs sort of framed and my goose over the top. I'm not going to cut these eggs just yet. I'll see how everything goes, but I have decided that I will cut myself a piece of this green paper to fit inside my working background, and then I'm going to trim this down slightly on either side. I'm liking the position of my gentleman farmer here, or my greedy farmer here. I'm thinking of putting a portion of the advert behind his legs, but for now I'm going to leave him as is. But actually I think I will just take a portion of either side of this. Maybe a little bit at the top. As I say, I'm going to now get a piece of this green paper, and I'm just going to trim it so that it's inside my working area, so I'll be back when that's done. I've trimmed this piece well inside the border to actually frame this piece, and I've put a little tiny dab of glue underneath my greedy farmer there to hold him in place. I may well trim this down further in due course, but what I was thinking is maybe having this underneath here. So I'm going to boldly just rip it across for now. I'm going to reduce a little bit of that blank area at the bottom, so let's do that to get a hint of that frame. Maybe need to rip it a bit more. Oh, it tears nicely. I'm just thinking maybe to slot it in there, a bit like that. I'm going to rip a little bit more off. I'm going to take away a little section on either side. Level that piece up there. Slide this in here. And this is where I wish that I had made this decorative border slightly wider. At least his feet look like they're grounded. Now, if I bring that down some more, he can be grounded on one of those lines. She can be grounded as well. think I'm going to leave that out and try and have her something like that. I'm going to trim away some of this base down here. Maybe a little bit on that side as well. I don't want to glue this portion of the advert just yet because I want to get the eggs and my goose staggered off the bottom of the advert as best I can. I'd like to have her higher up, about here, which means the advert can go up a little bit more. I'd like to have her head just below his arm there. I've got a few spare paper eggs here, which was a misprint of this, so I'm wondering if I could make use of these. So I think I'm more or less going to have it like this. I've got those extra little pieces of misprints tucked underneath my goose, so I'm going to try and put a little bit of glue underneath those pieces. Put a little bit of glue underneath my goose as well to hold her in place. This advert isn't in place as yet. I haven't really decided which of the eggs I want underneath the nest of eggs here. I like this blue one because there's hints of gold, picking up hints of gold on these eggs, and the blue picks up his shirt and the bluey tinge to my goose. But I actually don't mind this one as well. Using both of them I think is too much. I could go with that one. Ties in with the fairy tale, obviously. I think I'm going to go with this one. So I'm just going to pop a bit of glue behind. And I am going to glue it over the top of the other egg because it's got partially glued down, so I don't want to pull it out. And I'm just going to slot that one in there, like that. And go in and glue this portion down now. And a little bit more underneath my farmer in various places. And now I have to decide what I'm going to do with this edge here. I think I might need to because I haven't glued the advert straight, as always. So I'm just wondering whether to cut it here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take away the whole of this green piece and put a new piece in there. So there we go, everybody. That's my background piece trimmed to size, and I've got this little portion of the advertisement, the top portion, left over, and I was toying with the idea of just putting it up here and just having another element, bringing in these colours and the line, and again this border is just fractionally too wide for me to do that and get a decent staggering down the side, but I get a hint of it and I quite like the idea of that. So I think very carefully I'm going to try and glue that in place and see if I can make that work. If I take it away, that's what it looks like. Obviously I'd move it up, but if I put that back in place, let's use the tweezers. I could have it with that showing, and I'm not averse to that either. Let me just move that down slightly and have a look, like that. Ooh, decision times. So it's either like that, or I could bring that in up there. I have to say, I like the extra detail of having it up there. Balances this out down at the bottom here. And it is a very bottom heavy collage. I'm going to go with that. Okay, let's do that. I'm going to put a little bit of glue behind here. So there we go, everybody. That's my finished piece for this week. It's a little bit buckled at the moment whilst that glue dries, but it's going to dry nice and flat in due course. So quickly going through the prompts, a diagram or a chart. Well, I've got this crop rotation chart in the background there, something that squeaks or honks. I've got my lovely goose there. A section of a magazine advertisement. Well, I've got a section down here and then the remaining portion of it up there. So I've made full use of it this week. A cake. Well, I've got my Faberge Egg replica cake down in there. Inspired by a fairy tale. Well, that's my greedy farmer and the golden eggs down here. So the fairy tale, as I mentioned before, is the goose that lays the golden egg. And pattern paper. That's my lovely patterned green paper in the background there. So as always, everybody, photographs to follow. See you next week. Have a great week. Bye-bye now.